What are the best gaming monitors on the market? What are the key features to choose one model over another? In this video we will compare different monitors available on the market to see which one is better for you, highlighting the features that each model has. I will show you TN, VA and IPS monitors so you can see on screen the differences between these three panels. We will see monitors with different refresh rates and different formats and curvatures. After all this, I will also share with you the best monitors on the market today, the models I would buy right now. I hope this video is what you were looking for, and I wanted to emphasize that it has been possible thanks to your support. If you want the channel to keep progressing, don't forget to subscribe, check the description to follow us on the rest of the platforms, like TikTok or Instagram, and above all, add our Amazon, Best Buy and Newegg affiliate links to your bookmarks. That way, despite paying the same price for your online purchases, you will be contributing directly to this channel. The monitor is one of the main keys in any setup, whatever its use, be it for office, gaming, or multitasking. The objective of this video is to see how different monitor features affect the final user experience. Obviously, some features will be more important than others depending on how the monitor is used. For a gamer, the refresh rate of the monitor will be key, while for an editor or office worker the correct color rendering might be more important, and therefore the type of panel might be the most key feature. We are going to define all the features, and we have 4 different monitors to perform all the tests and compare the different options thoroughly. Be well prepared, because here you will have a lot of relevant information. Let's start slowly, talking about the general characteristics of the monitors. The first model we have is also the cheapest and the one I've had for the most years. I'm talking about the Benq GW2780. A 27-inch monitor with 1920 by 1080 resolution, 60 Hz as refresh rate, 5 milliseconds response time, and IPS panel. A super classic monitor, nothing special. The next in the list keeps the 27 inches, but UPS the resolution to 2560 by 1440 pixels, also making the jump to 144 Hz and 1 millisecond as response time. It also features premium FreeSync. The panel is curved in VA. I'm talking about the AOC CQ27G2U. The third monitor is again from Benq, the XL2731K model. Resolution 1920 by 1080, 165 Hz, 1 millisecond and TN panel. Finally, we have the monitor that I use on a regular basis. A Samsung LC34H, with ultra-wide 34 inches curved panel, 3440 by 1440 resolution, 100 Hz for milliseconds and VA. There you have them all. Now, let's move on to the keys so you know how to choose the key features. Monitor size, which is the diagonal screen distance, is measured in inches. It is generally the first thing to look at before choosing your next monitor. One characteristic to relate to size would be resolution. This tells us the number of pixels we have on the panel. A 1920x 1080p resolution. Known as Full HD, it tells us that the monitor has 1920 pixels across and 1080 pixels across. This number is not related to the size of the panel, but we have a very important concept that relates both characteristics, the pixels per inch. This concept represents the amount of total pixels we have in each inch of the monitor and is a way to measure the detail of the screen. If you have a 24-inch Full HD monitor, you have those 1920 by 1080 pixels crammed into 24 inches. If instead your monitor is 32-inch and maintains that 1920 by 1080 resolution, the pixels per inch, and consequently the detail, will go down. Each pixel will have to be larger to fill the entire monitor. The exact same thing happens if we keep the panel size, but change the resolution. The higher the resolution we have in the same inches, the smaller the pixels will be, and the greater the detail and the more pixels per inch. This feature is very important, and there is a lot of discussion about the resolution that each monitor should have depending on its size. Here we see two 27-inch monitors, one of them with Full HD resolution or 1920x 1080p and the other with Quad HD or 2160x 1440p. This second one would consequently be the one with the highest number of pixels per inch. In video and through YouTube it is impossible for you to distinguish the difference, but what about in person? Is the difference obvious? Keep in mind that we are comparing 27-inch monitors, and that this problem would be much more obvious if we compare two 32 monitors with these same resolutions, while on 24 monitors it would be even harder to see the difference. When the amount of pixels per inch is smaller, it is when the increase in resolution is more noticeable. Regarding my experience with these monitors, I must say that the verdict changes a lot depending on the scenario. In competitive games I hardly notice any difference in definition, but I do notice a huge drop in FPS if you use the same PC, so I would say that the experience is even worse. It is a problem to consider, since the higher the resolution, you will also need a more powerful PC. In other scenarios such as viewing content or for work, this leap is much more appreciated. I'm not the biggest expert, but once you get used to a Quad HD resolution monitor, going back to a 1080p monitor does feel a bit more noticeable in these situations. I tell you that in this example is not a disaster, and I at least could use without problem a 27-inch monitor with a 1080p resolution, although the jump to the 2K monitor is noticeable and appreciated. As a general rule, up to 27 inches is usually considered correct to shoot with 1080p resolution, but in monitors of 27-inch or more it is highly recommended to jump to Quad HD resolution or 2560x 1440p. 4K or 3840x 2160p monitors are also starting to be seen from 28 inches, but keep in mind that if you want to play games, you will need your PC to be much more powerful, and the price of the monitor will also go up a lot. In ultra-wide monitors, the most common size would be 34-inch, and in this case you usually see two resolutions, 2560 by 1080, which would be equivalent in pixels per inch to a full HD resolution of a 27 monitor, or 3440x 1440p, which would be equivalent to a Quad HD resolution in a 27 monitor. I mentioned the word ultra-wide to you, but what does this mean? And what about the curvature of the monitors? Is it better a flat screen or a curved one? If we do the literal translation, we can already see where the shots are going. The Spanish translation means ultra-wide. The concept that determines the proportions between width and height of a monitor is the form factor or aspect ratio. Surely many of you have heard of 4/3, 16/9, or 21/9 screens. All these numbers indicate the ratio between the width and height of the monitor. In the past we used to see screens with a very square aspect ratio, such as 4:3, which implies using resolutions according to this aspect ratio. For every 4 pixels of width, there will be 3 pixels of height. Very simple to understand. Over time the 16:9 began to become the standard, and the full HD resolution or 1920x 1080p for example obeys this form factor. Now even more widescreen monitors are starting to come out, as they allow you to see more content across the width, and end up giving a more immersive experience. A form factor that has become popular, and has even reached certain smartphones, would be the 21:9. An ultra-wide monitor is one that has a 21:9 form factor, so it is wider than the usual 16:9 standard. Now there are even 32:9 monitors, which are already a mega-wide savagery, even too much for many users, as they take up a lot of space. I am a user of a 21:9 ultra-wide monitor, so let's compare this monitor with a standard 16:9 option, to see the differences, advantages and disadvantages of each alternative. The ultra-wide monitor we have is a 34-inch Samsung, with 3440x 1440p resolution, VA panel and 100Hz as refresh rate. It is, as you can see, clearly wider than the 27-inch Quad HD monitor I have already shown you. What is this good for? Well, there are countless scenarios in which it has a clear advantage. Personally, the point I appreciate the most is productivity. Working with a split screen makes a lot more sense on this type of monitor, and tasks such as video editing are also much more comfortable, since the option of having a wider timeline is very useful. In certain games, such as simulation games, they also improve viewing angles quite a bit, and it makes the immersion and gaming experience much better in my opinion. But be careful here, as there could be certain games that are not too optimized for this format, or that don't support it at all. Often these ultra-wide monitors are ideal substitutes for a standard dual-screen setup. There are people who prefer dual monitors, and I understand them perfectly, as they have clear benefits, but in my case the single ultra-wide monitor is the ideal, because it takes up less space, gives me better performance, and is more comfortable and immersive. Again, a personal opinion. I think it is a better format to enjoy multitasking, and when more and more audiovisual content is created in this format, it will make even more sense for the vast majority of people. In price it is true that they are not so cheap, especially curved monitors with this 3440x 1440p resolution, but in my opinion they are still worth it. Regarding the curvature that I just mentioned, I must say that this curvature only usually interests me in ultra-wide monitors, and in other formats I even prefer a flat panel. Why? Simply because these panels are not wide enough to require the corners to wrap around you that little bit more. In ultra-wide panels, on the other hand, the edges are a bit farther away, and that's why the curvature is much appreciated. It provides that extra immersion that for me is an important extra. The type of panel mounted on the monitor is a very important key that you should take into account before buying. There are several types, and each has characteristics that affect color rendering and response times, among other things. In this video we will be differentiating three main types of panels, which are the most commonly used in monitors currently available on the market. I am talking about TN, VA, and IPS panels. Sound familiar? Well, below we are going to compare three monitors that I have around here. One of them is TN, the other VA, and the third is IPS. Obviously then we have a lot of variety of monitors with the same panel, and between the best IPS monitor and the worst there is also a significant difference, but as it is not feasible to compare all monitors on the market, let's try these three examples. I tell you that the results are already very representative. You will see everything very clearly. We are going to review different important sections in a monitor to see the main differences between these types of monitors. Let's start with one of the keys, which is the color representation. In the three monitors I have put a completely black video, but here we see very clear differences between the three monitors. The depth of the blacks is very important in a monitor that is going to be used to view quality content, and here we see how the TN panel especially lags far behind, and shows us a practically gray color and with a lot of light. The backlighting of the background is not turned off as in OLED panels that we see in TVs, and consequently it becomes impossible to get a pure black. The other panels achieve a better result, but the VA panel stands out above all, as it is the best at representing the color black. Let us now see what happens if we play a video with high contrast and many vivid colors. Here we also see many differences in the way of interpreting the image, and again, the TN panel is the one in third place, with an IPS panel that would be the most vibrant and the one that in this case I like the most, followed closely by the VA monitor. Be careful with some IPS panels, which also tend to suffer from light leakage, which affects the visual experience quite a bit. The second key I mentioned is the response time of the monitor. This is especially important in competitive games. This feature measures the time it takes for the monitor to refresh its pixels. Depending on the color of the pixel that must change, the time is usually different, and the response time that monitors give us is usually the fastest, the one that takes the jump from one gray pixel to another gray pixel. This is known as the gray-to-gray response time. On paper, here we have three monitors with different response times, and the TN monitor is the one that stands out, as it is the type of monitor that enables the best response times on average. In this case, we see these response times advertised by each monitor. What does this translate to in practice? Well, to a difference that is very difficult to measure, and that I personally cannot even perceive when the differences are so small. If we take it to the extreme, an exaggerated response time would be like playing with lag, and everything you do would take too long to happen on screen, something extremely uncomfortable. In competitive games is where this feature could matter the most, and many professional competitive players do notice the difference of milliseconds, but at my level it is impossible. If you are an advanced gamer who wants to reduce PC reaction times as much as possible, choosing the monitor with a low response time of 1 millisecond or less would be important, but for people like me, not skilled casual gamers, a 4 milliseconds monitor like this IPS is still just as good, and noticing the differences is extremely difficult. Of course, there are image errors that in games are popularly known as ghosting, which are much more likely to happen in monitors with higher response times. Something to take into account. But then, what type of panel should you choose according to your needs? Well, I think you already know the answer to this question. If you value image quality and correct color rendering, an IPS panel might be the way to go. This group could include all image and video editors, or gamers of games where the graphics are spectacular. If you want to play games but without losing that image quality and you are looking for the monitor to continue to represent colors well, a VA panel is the ideal choice. Currently there are VA options with response times that are at the level of TN panels, so we could say that it is an ideal balance. Finally, TN panels are today almost exclusively for gamers who value the speed of their monitor the most, and I would say it is a niche option. They are the least interesting monitors for the general public, since especially in the older models, they lose a lot of image quality to achieve that improvement in response times, which will also remain imperceptible by the vast majority of people. Their price can be an interesting plus, and it is true that the newer TNs have improved a lot, but they are still behind for many reasons, according to the tests carried out. The refresh rate is a key characteristic, as it indicates the number of times the monitor can refresh the screen. The measurement used is Hertz, which is a unit directly related to frames per second or FPS, which might be a term that sounds more familiar to you. So what is the difference between Hertz and FPS? Hertz is a fixed number related to the monitor and tells us the maximum number of FPS that could be displayed. Meanwhile, FPS measures the amount of images that are being reproduced on the monitor every second, and they are usually variable unless they are locked to a specific amount. For example, you may have a 165 Hz monitor, but your PC could be sending 120 images per second, so you will actually be seeing 120 frames per second. But watch out here, if your monitor was 60 Hz and your PC was sending 120 frames per second, you would actually be seeing 60 frames per second, since that is the maximum number of images that your monitor can reproduce every second. But what does all this affect? Let's see the real comparison between the VA 165 Hz monitor we have shown in the video and the IPS 60 Hz we also have here. This feature is so relevant in the end because a high number of FPS brings much more fluidity. The monitor image is refreshed more frequently, so reaction times are also much lower. This is especially important in shooters and competitive games in general, since in all of them it is important to react ultra fast. Currently there is already talk of monitors up to 480 Hz, which is a real barbarity. 60 Hz is the base standard, while 144 or 165 Hz is the recommended price-performance ratio today. Above that there is everything, reaching up to 360 Hz in certain models that are already available. The jump from 60 to 165 Hz is very noticeable in fluidity, and brings a notable advantage in terms of speed of reactions as well. I must tell you that from 165 Hz on I don't notice any difference, and in a blind test I doubt very much that inexperienced people would be able to differentiate a 165 Hz monitor from a 240 Hz one, for example. It is obvious that the step from 30 Hz to 60 Hz is much more noticeable than the one from 60 to 90 Hz, and the same happens with this other example. When the numbers are low, the rise in each Hz or FPS is much more noticeable percentage-wise. The change from 30 to 60 Hz is a 100% increase, while going from 60 to 90, which would also be 30 Hz, would be 50%. The use you are going to give it also influences a lot, since for work or multitasking is rare that you are going to need more than 60 Hz on your monitor. YouTube videos, for example, are limited to 60 frames per second, so a higher Hertz monitor would not give you any advantage either. But be careful with this, because a high FPS rate and a monitor with a high Hertz refresh rate does not directly imply that the experience will be smooth. A key word is also the frame time, or the time between frames. It could happen that within a second, all the frames are displayed in the first half of that second, and during the second half the frame is not updated. This produces a very uncomfortable effect. To combat this and other adverse phenomena, adaptive sync or adaptive refresh rates have been crowned. What does this mean? It means that the monitor will update its image as it receives images from the PC, thus greatly increasing the sense of fluidity. The monitor will always be ready and will adapt to the images passed to it by the graphics card. This order is very important because other technologies such as VSync or vertical synchronization have failed because they did the opposite. They adapted the refresh rate on the graphics card so that the monitor would receive what was expected. With this other method, performance was lost and the solution was far less optimal. Are you familiar with technologies such as FreeSync or GSYNC? Well, they are adaptive sync technologies that do what I was detailing, and they are the ideal solution. FreeSync would be the AMD version and GSYNC the version for NVIDIA graphics, but they do the same thing. Is it noticeable and recommended? Undoubtedly. Most monitors with high refresh rates usually integrate some of these technologies, so it would be interesting to take into account your graphics and choose a monitor that integrates this technology. Again, it will be especially relevant for gamers who are going to appreciate that fluidity and high refresh rates. You may have heard the word stuttering or tearing, which is related to all this, as it occurs when there is a desynchronization with the refresh rate of the monitor. These adaptive sync technologies avoid this kind of image errors, so they are very useful for this reason as well. The connections on a monitor can often go unnoticed, but it is a very important feature that can spoil the user experience you may have. Why do I say this? The ports that the monitor has to connect to your computer or console are the ones that determine important factors such as the resolution or the refresh rate that the monitor can reach. The most expensive and advanced monitors require very advanced connections with high data transfer rates. This is what allows them to achieve very high resolutions and high FPS rates. There are currently two
estropearte la
main standards,
experiencia de
which
uso
are
que puedas
HDMI
tener.
and
¿Por
DisplayPort.
qué digo esto? Los puertos
These
que tiene
types
el
of
monitor
connectors
para
in turn
conectar tu
have several
ordenador o
versions.
consola
The
son
most
los que
current ones
determinan
being those that
factores tan
reach higher
importantes como la
bandwidths and allow
resolución o
higher
la tasa de
resolutions
refresco
and
que puede
refresh
alcanzar
rates.
este mismo. Los monitores
The
más
greatest
caros y
exponents of
avanzados
each
requieren
standard would be
conexiones
first
muy
the
avanzadas con
HDMI
altas tasas de
2.1,
transferencia
which
de
offers a
datos.
bandwidth of
Esto
up to
es lo que
48
te
gigabits per
permite
second and
alcanzar
supports
resoluciones
resolutions up to
altísimas y
8K
altas
at
tasas de
60 Hz
FPS.
and support
Existen
for
dos
4K
estándares
at
principales
120
actualmente, que
Hz.
son el HDMI y DisplayPort. Este tipo de
2.0 would be
conectores
its
tienen a su vez
equivalent,
varias
although it is much
versiones,
more high
siendo las más actuales las que alcanzan mayores anchos de banda y permiten mayores resoluciones y tasas de
4K HDR would go to 144 Hz and a maximum resolution of 16K at 60 Hz would be possible. Keep in mind the resolution and refresh rate of your monitor, and verify that the connections it has perfectly support these requirements. Now that you know a lot more about monitors, how do you see yourself? Do you think you can choose the best monitor for you? I am going to help you in this process, as I am going to show you the best monitors of today. Monitors ranging from about $100 to more than $800 of the most expensive ranges. We will see monitors with different sizes, resolutions, refresh rates and types of panels, so surely one will align perfectly with your needs. Let's start with the most basic and cheapest monitors. They all have 1080p resolution and range from 75 Hz to 165 Hz. I have tried to keep them under $200, and there are options with different panels. My favorite choices are VA and IPS, as they have the best balance. Most monitors are 24 inches, although I also leave some 27 inches. For example, we have this 23.6-inch Acer Nitro ED240Q, 1 millisecond response time, and 1655 Hz, which is crazy in this price range. An ideal alternative for people who play competitive games and want a great monitor with high refresh rates for such a low price. And by the way, the monitor also has FreeSync Premium technology, so it's even better. There are a lot more options, which can be a bit cheaper or a lot more expensive. There are more links in the description, so you can check those if you want a new monitor for less than $200. By the way, I digress. Leave me a comment with the monitor you have or the one you want to buy, and by the way, remember that subscribe button, which by now should be pressed. In this higher range we move on to larger monitors, starting at 27-inch, and we have options for everyone. I will highlight the options ranging from 144 Hz, as they are undoubtedly the most interesting in value for money. There are some TN options, although I see this type of panel more suitable for 1080p monitors with less inches and even higher refresh rates. I probably wouldn't spend this much on a TN monitor. I personally recommend VA and IPS panels with a flat screen if possible, although it seems that curved monitors are having a lot of success, and the truth is that they are the most common ones. This is a personal opinion, so you may prefer a curved panel. It will have slightly worse viewing angles but will give you that extra bit of immersion. There are excellent options for around $300 or even less, and they seem to me to be the best value for money right now, especially if you have a very powerful PC that can run games in 1440p and take advantage of all the features of the monitor. As an example, this LG monitor, which has Quad HD resolution, 144 Hz, G-Sync, IPS panel, and 1 millisecond response time. Top specs for $300. For even less, AOC offers this other monitor, with 165 Hz and a curved VA panel. Great price! Even above, we have monitors that reach Ultra HD or 2160p resolution, maintaining high refresh rates and all the most relevant technologies. This type of monitor came out a few years ago, but they were inaccessible, with prices of more than $1,500 for the cheapest version. Nowadays, fortunately, there are many more alternatives and prices are starting to be succulent. Keep in mind that to move a monitor of these characteristics you will need a beastly PC, the best of today, which will already be costing you more than $2,000. These monitors also start at about 27-inch, and we have this option from Newskill, for example, which marks the entry to this high-end segment. I think that with the current hardware these monitors are hardly usable, and I think that with these features it would make more sense to have more screen size, so other options like this 43-inch monitor from Asus would make more sense, I think. It would be a great option if you are looking for a large monitor with top features. As in all markets, the high-end is aimed at a minority, but it clearly offers clear advantages and we see some of the best monitors on the market. The current prices are much more accessible luckily, so we have options like this Asus ROG with top specs for around $500. This was simply unimaginable a couple of years back. Let's see how the market stands in a couple years' time, with these high-end monitors becoming more and more accessible. Before ending the video, I don't want to pass up the option of mentioning ultra-wide monitors. I've been using my 34-inch curved Samsung monitor with a 21:9 aspect ratio for several years now, and I couldn't be happier. It has many positive aspects, and that extra width with the curvature offers an extra immersion that also comes in handy for video games. There are already quite a few ultra-wide alternatives, and in my opinion the ideal ones are those with 3440 by 1440 resolution with a VA or IPS panel. My Samsung monitor is VA, has FreeSync and reaches 100Hz as refresh rate, some extras that are very good. You have this and other monitors that can be around $400, so in terms of price they also seem to me very good options. It will cost you less than mounting two equivalent 1440p monitors, and at least in my case, the ultra-wide option is an even better solution. As with the previous ranges, I will be showing you models that I recommend in pictures, but you will also have them listed in the description. As you may have guessed from the length of the video and all the topics we have discussed, the choice of a monitor is much more complex than you might expect, as many factors come into play. You will have in the description all these monitors listed, and I hope one of them meets your needs and can fit you. For my part, I don't have much more to add. I just want to tell you that if you like the video, I would greatly appreciate your subscription and your likes, because these kind of super guides take a lot of time and work. That said, I'll see you with more and better content. See you next time, bye!